We gotta react. Should I watch the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan video? God.
The dawn of September 11th, 2000.
Is this in fucking movie aspect ratio? Are you kidding me, dude? Are you kidding me? You gotta be kidding me. It looks so bad. Like, it's just so small. It's so small. This doesn't work, dude. Look at it. You're just not using like fucking half the screen.
2001 signaled a monumental shift in modern geopolitics when Al-Qaeda, an extensive global extremist network, carried out a devastating attack on the United States. As a consequence,
that's not true. Where's your source for that? It was George W. fucking Bush.
The US initiated a comprehensive effort to disassemble the organization and motivate the replacement of the supporting Taliban regime who sheltered Al-Qaeda in the war-torn region of Afghanistan.
Wow, this guy he might as well just like be George W. Bush writing this himself. Jesus Christ.
I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian, and today we will be delving into the American intervention in Afghanistan.
It was an intervention.
Following the attacks on
It was an invasion.
It was immediately clear to the United States who was behind it: Osama bin Laden.
No, it was George W. Bush.
Founder and leading figurehead of Al-Qaeda. For President George W. Bush and his national security advisors, their immediate response was to open up channels to bin Laden's network in Afghanistan. Attempts were made by some US officials to arrange for the extradition of bin Laden without resorting to war.
It's basically not even true at all. What actually happened is the Taliban said they would extradite him, but they wanted proof first, and the US said no, and then just invaded because they wanted to invade anyway. They were never not going to invade. Like, give me a break. Come on.
The most notable among these was Robert Grenier, then CIA chief in Pakistan. November 15th, Grenier met with a Taliban commander called Akhtar Mohammad Osmani and asked for his help in turning over bin Laden to the Americans. Osmani was convinced to ask the Taliban leader, Muhammad Omar Mujahid, to surrender bin Laden in order to avoid an American invasion. However, as Grenier began opening this channel through to the Taliban, President Bush issued an ultimatum in a speech before Congress on September 20th. He called for the Taliban to surrender bin Laden and Al-Qaeda or share their fate. A bold demand, but one empowered by Congress, who had given Bush authority to use all necessary and appropriate force against...
That makes it okay, I guess. If the US Congress says that you can invade a country on the other side of the world, that makes it okay. After all, the US Congress are the ones who represent Afghanistan, aren't they?
Those behind the September 11th attacks. This also included any supporters of the perpetrators. Mullah Omar refused Bush's ultimatum, claiming bin Laden had not committed the attacks. As further justification, Omar cited bin Laden's oath of allegiance to him and the Afghan people's honorable commitment to protect their guests. By this time, it became clear that the Taliban were no longer willing to hand over bin Laden, and Grenier's last proposals for negotiations were dismissed and his channels to Osmani dried up.
It was in order to tackle Bush who refused. They were always going to fucking invade. Taking this seriously in any way, shape, or form is ridiculous.
The war against Al-Qaeda and its Taliban supporters, the Bush administration developed 6 strategic objectives for the operations in Afghanistan, with the key focus being the elimination of Al-Qaeda and the possible capture of Osama bin Laden.
They straight up, like, this is how YouTubers basically are. They just take like what the US government says about things and why they're doing it, what their goals are, etc., completely at face value, and just go and just repeat it verbatim, but with like fancy graphics. This is what history YouTubers are, and it's getting out of hand. It's not getting out of hand because now there are 2 of them. It's getting out of hand because now there's 8,000 of them.
Objectives would be incorporated into the wider Operation Enduring Freedom, which was all but confirmed following the deadline left for the Taliban on October 5th.
Oh, this is part of Enduring Freedom. Don't worry, there's some sources linked in the description that aren't actually ever cited in the video itself, so it's okay.
In a multi-ethnic country like Afghanistan, skilled local translators were a vitally important asset during the war. And thanks to the sponsor of today's video...
Oh my god, you're using translators to advertise a fucking language app.
On October 7th, the United States began airstrike operations on numerous targets throughout Afghanistan, which, in turn, rallied the Taliban to Mullah Omar and bin Laden. In order to avoid the worst of these strikes, bin Laden left his home in Kandahar and disappeared, and had his top commanders sent out of the country. Al-Qaeda was virtually dismantled, except for loyal fighters who remained on the front lines outside Kabul, while others
Lil Griff
retreated east into the mountains to await the US attack. In the meantime, other divisions within the CIA were busy enacting plans parallel to Robert Grenier's overtures back in September. Under the CIA's Special Activities Division,
why does the CIA look like the fucking Matrix?
Paramilitary team led by senior intelligence officer Gary Schroen flew to Tashkent, Uzbekistan on September 20th aboard a CIA cargo plane. 6 days later, they boarded an old Russian-made Mi-17 helicopter and were inserted into the Panjshir Valley north of Kabul. They flew in with weapons, secure satellite communications gear, GPS...
Yeah, this guy loves the CIA. Like, it's about the invasion of Afghanistan, right? Which was a full-scale ground, air invasion of Afghanistan. And he's talking about, like, the CIA, like, from the very beginning. Like, half the video so far has been about the CIA. And he makes them look like they're fucking Neo from the Matrix.
Mapping equipment, and $10 million in boxed cash. The SAD operatives were welcomed by the Northern Alliance, who were already engaged in their insurgency against the Taliban. Led by Mohammed Fahim, Schroen's agents went to work establishing the first of more than a dozen forward operating bases across Afghanistan. The SAD worked alongside Afghan warlords and rebel armies to send human intelligence back to Langley. This included important data such as the locations of minefields and terrorist safe houses. With the stroke of a computer key, counter-terror...
Isn't it interesting how, like, basically every single person in Afghanistan who's not on the side of the USA is a terrorist automatically? He's just straight up immediately referring to them as terrorists. No matter what, like people defending their own country from a disgusting, brutal invasion that killed hundreds of thousands of people for no fucking reason whatsoever, aside from fucking United States geopolitical power and economic power. And anyone who, like, is against that is automatically a terrorist. Like, it doesn't refer to them as, like, the Taliban or, like, opposition fighters or Afghan resistance fighters. It's straight to terrorists.
Terrorism center staff in America could keep a record of these locations and relay them to CIA...
You can tell exactly who he is. This isn't like the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan. This is, I want to deep throat the CIA.
Paramilitary operators to assist them with field work. Operations were being driven 24/7 from inside the CIA's Global Response Center, which secured a direct line to the Defense Department's Joint Intelligence
straight to fucking Morpheus too, I guess.
Operations Center at Central Command in Florida. The CIA's paramilitary teams would be augmented with special operations forces from the military, such as the Green Berets and Delta Force. Despite the evacuation of bin Laden and his senior officers from Afghanistan, the US military exhausted its list of fixed Taliban targets in the first 2 nights of bombing, in which more than 100 Afghans were reported killed. By October 19th, special forces had arrived with 3 12-man teams initially deployed to the areas of Takhar, Panjshir, and Mazar-e-Sharif.
This is not like a video about the 2001 American invasion of Afghanistan. This is a celebration of the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan, and particularly the role of the CIA in it. Like, it is straight up, it's a propaganda video. It's actually a propaganda video. It could have been made by the US government itself, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
More arrived within the month. The Northern Alliance had 15 to 20,000 men, split between 4 commanders.
Just so that you guys know, this isn't how you do history. You don't do history by just straight up, like, looking at something from the perspective, in this case, of the fucking aggressor, disgusting mass murdering aggressor, imperialist aggressor at that, and then just take everything from their perspective at face value and recount it, like, glowingly with excitement, like you're a kid watching Dragon Ball Z or something.
Across 5 different locations: the Kabul frontline, Badakhshan, Takhar, central Afghanistan, and Herat. Throughout Afghanistan, the Taliban had around 45,000 men, plus 2,700 al-Qaeda and other foreign fighters. The Taliban fighting forces were arrayed across the north, organized as fronts consisting of fighters under various commanders. These fronts faced the Northern Alliance forces near Kabul, Badakhshan, and Mazar-e-Sharif. Once the air campaign began, other cadres from the south and east were sent to reinforce their front line in Kabul. Additionally, volunteers rushed in from Pakistan, perhaps as many as 500 per day. Under the American Central Command in Afghanistan, General Tommy Franks launched a ground offensive after October 19th, shifting air assets to support the north.
This is just, it is a celebration. Like, there's not really much of a point in watching it, I feel, because I don't think he's going to fucking say anything. Like, he's going in, like, the heroic American cavalry
in combat.
Is coming up, guys.
With this new close air support, the CIA and Special Forces teams were working directly alongside Northern Alliance commanders. From October 21st, they began their attack on the Taliban front lines.
It's probably the most embarrassing thing in the world. to be like, look at all our cool planes bombing these random guys just defending their country from us with AK-47s, and then we lost.
South of Mazar-e-Sharif, eventually leading to its capture on November 12th. Much of the success with the Northern Alliance and U.S. Special Forces lay in their maneuverability, making extensive use of horses to sweep across the difficult Afghan terrain. In a scene somewhat reminiscent of a historical epic, Chief Warrant Officer Bob Pennington recalled their great ride toward Mazar-e-Sharif. I looked back, looked south.
Why are they screaming like fucking Mongols?
And then I just realized it was the most unbelievable shot I've ever seen. It was 1,000 riders on horseback. It was peaceful, yet magnificent. Victories by the coalition and its allies had spread panic throughout Taliban forces in the capital of Kabul, who began leaving the city in droves. By November 13th, the Taliban's presence in Kabul had completely collapsed, with word spreading south and undermining Taliban morale everywhere. Taliban fighters outside of the city in the eastern and southern regions started laying down arms, blending into their villages, heading to Pakistan, or making for the mountains. The sovereignty of their religious state crumbled, leaving authority up to localized tribal leaders. After the fall of Kabul, the issue of establishing a new government to replace the Taliban.
How do we even get here, man? Like, nothing's happened at all. Like, so I guess Kabul fell because, like, there were some guys on horses who yelled, and it was beautiful. That's about all of the explanation that I saw for how Kabul fell.
Taliban became a pressing concern. Instead of a formal administration, warlords took control of the areas they had liberated, causing problems in governance. The UN was pleased with the Allied victory, but dismayed at the lack of progress in forming a new government. The Northern Alliance, especially, was reluctant to expand into the Pashtun regions of Jalalabad or Kandahar, which led to the United States supporting local Pashtun allies. Hamid Karzai, a skilled diplomat and tribal leader, was chosen to lead the new interim government. To help solidify this progress, the United States, Pakistan, India, Russia, and Iran worked together at the Bonn Conference to establish a political settlement and transition Afghanistan toward democracy. This resulted in the Bonn Agreement, which outlined a series.
Thank God. Just literally taking whatever the US says at face value. I can say that to any statement in this video, and it's true. And it's fucking true. He just takes like the US government narrative of what happened at face value and repeats it over and over again. Everything that they say. Like the reason why they were doing this, well, it was democracy, obviously. Why were they attacking? Why were they invading Afghanistan? You know, why were they attacking these people? To end terrorism. It's that simple.
Of steps toward establishing democracy, including the formation of an interim administration.
There's no analysis here. It's pure narrative. Pure narrative.
An assembly to choose a transition.
No explanation, no analysis. It's pure, this happened, and this is why it happened, which is just so happens to be like what the side that did it wants us to believe that the reasoning was.
National government and national elections. Karzai was elected.
When you think about how substanceless this is, it really is just zero substance.
Leader of this new
It's entirely carried by these like kind of not that great animations and drawings.
Interim government, and with U.S. Special Forces protection, moved out of southern Afghanistan, pressing on to Kandahar city even after an accidental U.S. bombing had injured him and killed 10 members of his retinue, along with 3 Special Forces troopers assigned to him. Despite the victories throughout Afghanistan, the hunt for Osama bin Laden and other al-Qaeda leaders was still ongoing. In early December, teams working under the CIA and Task Force SWORD had infiltrated the mountainous area of Tora Bora, confirming the presence of both Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters. On December 5th, Task Force SWORD and Northern Alliance militias advanced on Tora Bora with U.S. air support.
Advanced military tactic. You just kneel out in the open and like randomly fire.
Pushing deep into the mountain bunkers and caves. Additional Afghan fighters with aged Soviet-made tanks joined the operation, as did German and British Special Forces units. Despite the heavy bombing and capture of jihadist fighters, bin Laden was not found. The operation ended in mid-December, with estimates asserting that 1,500 to 2,000 Afghan, Arab, and Chechen al-Qaeda fighters occupied Tora Bora before the attack. Of these, perhaps 2/3 evacuated across the border into Pakistan. Other Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters crossed the border elsewhere along its 1,200-mile length. But Mullah Omar, the Taliban leader, and Osama bin Laden successfully fled to Pakistan. The evacuation of jihadists from Tora Bora left only a short moment of respite. In early 2002, American intelligence picked up indications of al-Qaeda fighters concentrating in the Shah icon.
This is just like a Wikipedia article written from the US perspective. I don't think there's really much of a reason to continue. Though I would like to see, what did you talk about? What happened next?
None of these positions had been detected by drones, air reconnaissance, or satellites. According to the United States Army reports, the operation suffered from inadequate intelligence, insufficient organic fire support, and unrealistic expectations, including an over-reliance on warlord militias. A major weakness was air-land integration due to a mutual lack of understanding between the CJTF mountain headquarters and the Battle of Roberts Ridge, and it took 5 more days for the ground forces to achieve control over the key terrain. Many of the al-Qaeda and jihadist defenders had been killed by intense American airstrikes, yet U.S. troops were astonished to
really nothing here.
Find well-protected trenches, bunkers, and
there's really nothing here. Like, it's just substanceless. Like, you could make a video like this about, like, the fucking German invasion of Poland and do the same thing that he did. And you could kind of get some perspective on how fucking bad it is to do that, right? Because it would be like, the great, like, strong like efficient German army amassed on the border of Poland, and then they invaded. But the goddamn like Slavic hordes resisted them. It's like on that level of just purely taking what the the imperial aggressor says and repeating it ad nauseum. It's just bad. And I was trying to be positive today.